Eyes on the Street is an idea put forward by Jane Jacobs, an influential writer about city design and the way cities work. Her book, The Death and Life of Great American Cities, is probably one of the best-selling and most known books about city planning ever written, and a lot of the ideas she coined are talked about today on the subject of urban design and the way we build streets. So, what does this idea of eyes on the street mean? I'll start with Jacob's idea about cities. In her eyes, the thing that really takes centre stage when discussing a city is that it's fundamentally a place of strangers. Maybe in a village of 50 or so people you know everyone. You can't say that in a city. The defining feature is you will always be surrounded by strangers. So how do you stay safe and how do you feel safe? And this is what Jacobs writes about making a street safe and introducing the idea of eyes on the streets. She says, a city street equipped to handle strangers and to make a safety asset in itself out of the presence of strangers, as the streets of successful city neighbourhoods always do, must have three main qualities. First, there must be a clear demarcation between what is public space and what is private space. Public and private spaces cannot ooze into each other as they typically do in suburban settings or in projects. Second, there must be eyes on the street, eyes belonging to those we might call the natural proprietors of the street. The buildings on the street equipped to handle strangers and to ensure the safety of both residents and strangers must be oriented to the street. They cannot turn their backs or blank sides on it and leave it blind. And third, the sidewalk must have users on it fairly continuously, both to add to the number of effective eyes on the street and to induce the people in buildings along the street to watch the sidewalk in sufficient numbers. Nobody enjoys sitting on a stoop or looking out a window at an empty street. Almost nobody does such a thing. Large numbers of people entertain themselves, off and on, by watching street activity. You see, in her eyes, the main way that these streets are actually policed is by other citizens. It's obvious why. If you think there are people watching you, it becomes very difficult to, say, lure a child into an alleyway or try to mug something. The physical person-to-person crimes, the things which are generally the ones we care about and worry about the most, are made much more difficult by the knowledge that other citizens are seeing the scene and can react. Jacobs actually tells a rather wonderful story about this, which I think I should share. I'll quote from her again. She says, "The incident that attracted my attention was a suppressed struggle going on between a man and a little girl of 8 or 9 years old. The man seemed to be trying to get the girl to go with him. By turns he was directing a cajoling attention to her, and then assuming an air of nonchalance. The girl was making herself rigid, as children do when they resist, against the wall of one of the tenements across the street. As I watched from our second-floor window, making up my mind how to intervene if it seemed advisable, I saw it was not going to be necessary. From the butcher shop beneath the tenement had emerged the woman who, with her husband, ran the shop. She was standing within earshot of the man, her arms folded and a look of determination on her face. Joe Cornacchia, who with his son-in-law keeps the delicatessen, emerged about the same moment and stood solidly to the other side. Several heads poked out of the tenement windows above. One was withdrawn quickly, and its owner appeared a moment later in the doorway behind the man. 2 men from the bar next to the butcher's shop came to the doorway and waited. On my side of the street I saw that the locksmith, the fruit man and the laundry proprietor had all come out of their shops, and that the scene was also being surveyed from a number of windows besides ours. That man did not know it, but he was surrounded. Nobody was going to allow a little girl to be dragged off, even if nobody knew who she was. I am sorry purely for dramatic purposes, to have to report that the little girl turned out to be the man's daughter. So that's Eyes on the Street. I quite like that story. And it really shows the importance of this. People who care about the place, who care about it, are able to stop potential threats by having the numbers and the attention to solve these problems. This is an idea that really changed how I think. Before, I had never really thought about the design of a street as something that was vital to how safe it was. No, the idea is there now. I can walk by a place and see what is encouraging eyes on the street, what's discouraging people from looking out at the place, making it less safe. And of course, this becomes interesting when you're looking at public space, maybe when you're planning out the idea, And this is true whether we're talking about a city centre, a park, a town, a suburban shopping centre. No matter what we're doing, if these eyes are something that's important to stopping crime, how do we encourage these eyes? How do we make it so that people want to and are able to police their own streets? But that's a topic for another video. I'll bring that back later.